Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Mind Sculptors podcast. I am your host, Callahan, and today we have an episode where we will be sitting down and chatting with the new Mox Bold champion, Sickrobot. Reed is a fantastic cEDH player. He is a fantastic human, and he had a great season in the MLC this year. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear our conversation. It's always a pleasure to get to chat with him, honestly, about anything. But this was a really fun conversation that the two of us got to have. Before we dive into that conversation, I do want to take a moment, thank all of our patrons for the support you have given, especially over the last 3 or 4 months of the dealing with the MLC. Your support goes towards continuing this show, making this possible, but also enabling us to be able to do more stuff like the MLC. One of the patron perks is access to our Discord server where we brew, share memes, discuss spoilers. I don't know. We talk about sports. It's really, honestly, a pretty good time. So if you want to join our Sculpty family, head on over to patreon.com/the Mind Sculptors, and you can find out more information there. It's time to check in on our Apple Podcast ratings. And this week we have one new rating. This rating comes from Smiley Face 888. It's titled Amazing, 5 stars. This podcast is great. How you guys manage to have 5 stars doesn't surprise me. Happy to learn from this podcast as I am new. It helps me get the advantage at my play group. Glad we can help you out. Always remember, though, with your play group to be having those pregame discussions to make sure everybody's on the same page as to what you are playing and, make sure everybody's okay with playing cEDH. But even then, a lot of the stuff we talk about here is pretty important to just being good at playing EDH in general, in my opinion. But thank you so much for that rating. And a reminder to everybody, if you leave a rating on Apple Podcasts for us, we will make sure to read that out on each new episode. So thank you so much for that rating. With that, we are going to head over into my conversation with Reed, starting off with our lovely Dear Sculptybois segment. Enjoy. Be brutally honest. What is your opinion on dedicated reactive decks that don't run many stacks effects, i.e. Rashmi, Curious Control? And that is from Charles is really hot in Colorado.
What a name.
So obviously we are aware of your opinion on like some of my like Art and Crom decks and stuff like that. But what are your thoughts on like those like dedicated control lists?
I want to distinguish some things here. So the issues that I have with Art and Crom are not because of the way that it chooses to deploy its suite of interaction and how it chooses its interaction suite. The issues that I have with Art and Crom are issues of the colors themselves and win con accessibility. I realistically, my answer to this is always like, I really don't have an issue with people like experimenting with whatever, so long as you can actually win the game and you can actually like find the way to win the game consistently when you need to find it. Because like if you're playing a strategy where you can successfully lock the board and then you need 6 turns to find your win and you're just giving people draw steps to find the out to it, or like you can't quite establish the hard lock and then they just get out of it. Right. I don't think that's. I think there are some pretty core issues with that strategy, but just playing like hard control. Yeah, I think as long as you have like decent win cons and you can find them relatively easily and you can actually cast them. I don't have an issue with those at all. I think there's a place in the meta for them, especially when you have hard tech. I mean, like obviously Curious Control works really well when your meta is all Tymnas and Nagilas because you can just play pyroclasms and none of your stuff cares about pyroclasms, and then you just grind them into the ground, and then you basically winning as a formality at that point, but you still have access to like the Oracle consult, so you're just good to go. But yeah, like I think those decks are more than fine in a lot of situations. The issue with hard control decks is you just have to find the metas that they're good in, and you have to really, really do tuning to them. Like you can't just take the stock list for the control list in the same way that you can take stock lists for like even mid-range lists or like fast decks, or like even a lot of like turbo roll law lists. You can sort of run with the stock list and do fine in a lot of metas. Control is really like one of the archetypes that requires the most tuning to whatever meta you're wanting to play it in.
I like Control's one of those archetypes that I think is so player dependent, because like I feel like your room for error in a control deck is like so much smaller than your room for error in a deck like, I don't know, Cody or Rog Silas or Blue Farm or any of those decks, right? You know,
I think the margins of error aren't actually even like I think the margin of error is a good way to look at it. I think the way that I prefer to look at it is that none of the decisions are necessarily higher stakes than they are in decks like Cody or Rog Silas or stuff like that. It's just that there are more of them over the course of the game by necessity, because you're just looking to play a longer game. And it's also harder to correct those mistakes in hindsight versus playing a turbo deck or a deck that has very immediate consequences for bad decisions. If you make a bad decision, even in mulligans, so like at the earliest point that you can make a bad decision in like playing something like Rog Silas, if you make a mistake in mulligans, it becomes apparent within the first 3 turns of the game. You're like, oh, yeah, I'm screwed. I don't get to play the game anymore because I fucked up in mulligans, and I put the wrong card on the bottom. I was looking for the wrong card, whatever. Like game ends on the spot. Maybe you keep playing the game for like another 7 turns or whatever, but like you're never actually going to do the thing that the deck is built to do. Control decks, I think they're difficult to pilot, but it's not like orders and orders of magnitude more difficult to pilot than a lot of just standard cEDH lists. The issue is that when you make a mistake on a control list, the ramifications of that mistake happen 5 turns down the line.
Yeah.
And now you're just like, okay, so I fetched incorrectly 5 turns ago, and now I don't have the blue mana to cast this double blue counter spell because I thought that I would need the mana to hold up both a Tainted Pact and a Pyroblast. So I fetched a Badlands instead of an Underground Sea. Right. And then in the moment, you're not thinking about that. You're like, oh, fuck, I got mana screwed because my mana base sucks. God damn it. All right, well, next game. So like, it's in Control. It's just it's harder to get better at Control because you need to. Like, you really need to sit down and analyze play errors, and you need to know what you're looking for when you're analyzing play errors, which is like not an easy thing to do, right?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That's one of the reasons why I'm always just like, hi, I love Lavinia. Please don't play this deck. You will, you will be miserable. I trust me.
I have a similar thing with Yorion, where I love Yorion, and I love the fact that it makes a lot of the people that I play it versus miserable. But I would never recommend anybody to actually play that list, because it's the decision trees are so insanely large for the like most minute benefit that you get out of it. Because like you're making all these incredibly hard decisions, and you're doing them like you're making hard decisions every end step for like 3 turn cycles. Like literally everybody's end step for the like 3 turn cycles, and then there was never even a way that you were going to win that game.
We did bring you on because yesterday, well, obviously you're a member of the Mind Sculptors, obviously.
Oh yeah, it's just why would I not be on the podcast? Come on.
Yeah, it's just you haven't been in a long ass time.
I'm not sure I've ever been on the podcast. I think I've done gameplay recordings for the Mind Sculptors.
That's true. I don't know. Oh yeah, you didn't even do anything for the award show. That ended up being Morgan who did that. So anyhow, well, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. Love to be on.
But you're our MLC champion. You won the Mox Bowl yesterday. Congratulations.
Mox Bowl 2 champ. Lock it in.
It's wild to me that we have done 2 of these things now. Like,
yeah, right.
It's just
you've gotten all the way through 2 of them. It wasn't even like got through 1, started the second, and just had it not happen. Yeah, got through 2.
It is absurd. But last season was probably, not to speak for you, but I feel like you would definitely say it was a disappointment. I believe you missed the playoffs by a little bit.
Yeah. I think a lot of it was just that I wasn't, as we were talking about in pre-show, this isn't going to sound like a thing at all, but I wasn't taking it as seriously last year, which is like an insane contrast to what I was just telling you in terms of pre-show for this season. But I think it actually mostly, I'm pretty sure last year it actually mostly came down to my draft. Like I felt like the draft was relatively good, but it was probably one dimensional in a way that my draft this year wasn't. Like I think last year I was just like picking good decks and decks that I had comfort on, but wasn't really taking into consideration like actual matchup spreads or anything, or even like building the decks in a way that I thought was actually going to be good in the meta. And this
you
year
also have like some restrictions on how you could build those decks too.
But like even I think I made like comparable numbers of swaps to the decks last year and this year. Like I don't think any of the decks that I changed had like over 10 cards changed. Mm-hmm. I think not even 5, except for maybe CVT, where I did some alterations just to make it more mid-rangey.
Yeah. Well, it is. So before we get into your victory yesterday, which was an insane game, we had 2 really long games.
Just like hour and a half slugfests and untimed, and no chance of going to time the round.
Went to turn 11.
Yep.
Which is insane in a game of EDH. Specifically cEDH, right? And so and then we get to your game and it's a turn 3, which was quite the contrast. But before we even get anywhere near that, we were just talking about the draft. Yeah. So looking at your draft, you were drafting right behind Morgan.
Yep. Definitely was.
At the 23rd spot. And so you had the 21st pick in the draft each round. And so in the first round, you picked CST. Second round, you picked Blue Pod. Third round, you picked Kodama clones. Yep. In the fourth round, you picked Adaptive Sisay. And then you ended up dropping Kodama clones for Rakdos Doomsday. Yeah. Off of the free agent wire. But when you were in the draft, like going into draft night, what was it? Because I assume you and Morgan were like definitely like game planning heading in. But like, what were your thoughts heading into?
So interestingly enough, actually, me and Morgan didn't actually even really do that much talking in terms of like strategizing what picks we wanted. I think basically the extent of us talking about that stuff was like, well, we both sort of want Hermit Druid / like some form of Thrasiostemna in the draft. And then the rest of it was sort of free form. Mm-hmm. But realistically, like the concepts that I went in with were like, okay, I want decks to cover different matchups. Like I going in, I was like, okay, I need a mid-range deck. I need a deck that I can play into hard stacks. I need a deck that I can take advantage of early table position with. And then there's some other deck that can act as filler. Mm-hmm. Like the fourth pick is just the fourth pick. You get what you get whatever the best deck left over is, and you just run that for a bit. So yeah, the draft ended up it was a bit weird because Canopus Silas wasn't it ended up like I thought Thrastimna was going to be my relatively fast deck that I could play in early table position and get advantage from there. And then after the draft, I basically just realized like, Oh, right. Never mind. I'm going to have to play Thrust Timna in all of my conference games because it's just all mid-range. It's just mid-range hell in this pod, and I can't afford to take any other deck into it aside from like maybe exactly Sisay. Like there's no chance in hell I'm playing blue pod into a mid-range thing, into like a mid-range pod, and I'm not playing Grenzo into that pod either. Like neither of those are going to do any metaphoric they're both going to be underutilized compared to their potential in a bunch of matchups. So I ended up swapping out the Kadama because I also like Kadama Silo or Sakadama. Yeah, Sakadama. Yeah. And unfortunately just ended up filling basically the same role that Blue Pod did in terms of Blue Pod wins through hard stacks outboard states pretty easily. You just like one card being able to assemble combos, especially Kiki and like people again. We saw this in a couple of games, but when people have bounce spells, have fun playing bounce spells against the Kiki combo deck where it's just like, okay, I'm going to cast it next turn. I'm going to cast the thing next turn. You get to bounce it again. I'll cast it next turn until you don't have bounce spells anymore. And then you die. I felt like I needed a faster deck, which is why I picked up Grenzo in the trade after the draft. But yeah, I mean, going in, realistically, all it was that we both wanted Thrust Timna Hermit Druid as first pick. Morgan was picking one pick before me, so we got it. So I took CST instead because they're effectively the same deck. It was just like some mid-range form of Thrust Timna with good win cons. And then obviously Blue Pod. Morgan actually gave me a pity pick there. He was like, okay, I'm either taking the Blue Pod or I'm taking Thrasvile Hermit Druid. I don't really care which one do you want? And I was like, Blue Pod, please. Then he was like, all right, fine. I'll take the other one. So thanks to Morgan for that one. Blue Pod did me well. And then, I stole Captain Sisay from Ian because Ian wanted Sisay. And I was like, nope, that one's coming to me because I think that one actually was underpicked pretty substantially. I think even like, honestly, personally, I think Captain Sisay could fit in like last half of third round in terms of pick priority, just because I think like
it plays pretty well into this meta.
Yeah, it's like specifically into the MLC meta where you can be guaranteed that like at least like half to 2/3, even like 3/4 of the field that you're going to see in regular gameplay is going to be like 2-color jank piles. And Sisay just does incredibly well into those decks. If they're not like Rakdos stuff that's trying to kill you on turn 2, any of like the 2-3 color mid-range stuff, Sisay actually does like unreasonably well into, unless they have specifically an op agent in play. You just like get to keep picking up like stacks pieces that shut down the things that you're missing. And then once that happens, you're just like, okay, every time I'm going to pick up a monster. Can you deal with the monster? No, great. You died to an Elish Nord. Did you deal with the Elish Nord? Okay, can you deal with the Yasharn plus Linvala? And then I drew a Living Plane. Can you deal with Linvala Living Plane? And then like you just like keep doing this stuff. And then some games you also just like, okay, I'm just going to tutor for Vivian and then Ashaya kill you. And then the table dies. So like it's really good into those games where nobody plays enough removal because nobody ever plays enough removal. The only interaction is like stacks pieces and counter magic. And then you're just like, okay, I'm just going to pick up the most expensive card in my deck every turn and cast it. And that's how I'm going to break parity on your rule of law.
Right. You didn't do terribly bad on it. You won I played it once, I think. And then you had like once or twice, or I think you were like 1-1 on it.
I played it once and then had to play it again for the I think in the last game of the season and the regular season. Yeah. But yeah, that first game was great. I finale'd for like X equals 14 and just murdered the table with combat damage because there was an op agent in play. And I was just like, well, if you're going to stop me from activating Sisay, I'll just turn it sideways the other way and kill you instead.
Fun thing about finale, it can pull out of the graveyard.
Yeah, especially when your commander tutors for Guy's Cradle before the op agent comes down. And then you're just like, we're doing this. This is the game.
Let's go. That's great. So you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but specific things throughout the season kind of was a blur. You've had a very busy, honestly, like
3 months, like
3 months. It's honestly been a busy year in general.
That's just everything going on. Stuff. Like, it's just also life is hugely time draining, right? So you just end up,
but take me through some of the season there for you. You went 4-5-1. You won the division.
Yep.
What was your goal as far as making playoffs with that was concerned?
As in from like through the entire season at the end, like before
which angle were you trying to come at it from? Were you just was it I want to try and get the bye? If I just make it, that's fine. I think I can win through it. Or
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, the goal was just win all the games that I play in. And then any game that you don't win is just like, oh, well, we'll get them next time.
Yeah.
We'll win the next one instead. I don't know, when I play. A lot of the time when I play in tournaments or play in events like this, the mindset isn't like I'm going to try to win this tournament. It's just like, well, we're just going to win this game. And then if that doesn't work, we're going to win the next one. And if I can't win this game, then we're going to draw it. And if I get the draw, then OK, what do I need next round to win? Great. We'll go for a win.
Right.
Just like play for whatever you need to keep getting the good score line. And then like last round, maybe go for an ID or something if like that's like safe enough. And I just want to make it like lock top 16 or something. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, for the season, it was mostly just I'm just going to win all the games that I can, draw any games that I can't win, and then take the losses in stride and just hope to make it out. Yeah.
And you did really well in your conference play, too, with a 3-4-1 record. Excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
As far as the conference goes, I know you brought this up in the interview yesterday. But one of your favorite moments was with Sage, who ended up finishing right behind you in the conference.
Yeah.
And just explain that a little bit, because this is kind of a fun story. It was specifically requested to be on the podcast.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So I knew that I was going first for one of the games in the season, which means that I'm playing the fast deck that I drafted, because I drafted the fast decks for when I'm going first to try to cheese the table. So we got some Grenzo in, and the hand that I saw was, which is usually good enough, especially in a pod. I forget what the entirety of the pod was, but it was something like it was me first on Grenzo, Sage second on Valky. And then there were like not super interactive tables at the other two seats. So I saw an opening hand of turn 1 Doomsday Pass into turn 2 Grenzo win with a drawing a deflecting spot off the top because Doomsday. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, if nobody has the counter for the turn 1 Doomsday, then I'm drawing the interactive piece off the top, then I'm just murdering the table. So we're just going to do this. Yeah, fine. So I did that. And then Sage happened on turn 1 on their turn to have a turn 1 produce 7 mana cast Valky uptick or cast Tybalt uptick to munch the top of my library, which was just the absolute perfect punish for it's like cosmic punishment for doing Doomsday Pass. It's like, how can I punish you in the most specific way for taking the Doomsday Pass play pattern that people have been telling you and you've been preaching is bad for the past 5 years?
Oh, man. And it's funny because that's like kind of what Sage is known for, is they are really good at just getting like absurd starts.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was always an option in my mind that it's like, yeah, this has the potential to go wrong. But like, he just got a bet against the turn 1 7 mana. And then it just happened. And it was like, yeah, all right. Yeah, that's about how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. So when you ended up making it to the playoffs. You won the Coalition North, which was a slog.
Oh, yeah. Like orders of just the most stacked division in the history of the MLC by like just multiple levels, like just so not okay in terms of even
once Pongo left, we replaced Pongo with Squirrel Mob.
Yeah, with Squirrel, who still had Pongo's draft and was also a good player.
Thank you for saying that, James. If you're listening, you are James a good player.
Super self-deprecating.
Yeah, like you are.
I think the only reason he says that is because like he doesn't have actual perfect play and he just like doesn't enter events, and it's like first of all, you don't have to enter events to be a good player, and also like everybody punts, like it's just not. Yeah.
So it ended up being 2 people from your division made the playoffs in the Coalition.
Yeah.
So yesterday we go into the playoffs, the coalition. What was your thoughts when you saw the decks that were selected to get played in that championship game for the coalition?
Yeah, so I saw Fukins. Obviously, Fukins went first. It was locked in because he ended up having, I think, better seating than me.
Well, even before that, when you just saw what the conference playing game selections were.
So actually, I'm going to talk about Fukins first because that actually informs what I thought about the playing games metas. Yeah. So I saw Fukins pick Rakdos Rog, Jund Rog, which is fast deck. Fast deck wants to go fast. It wants to cast Ad Naus on turn 1. And if it can't cast Ad Naus on turn 1, it wants to cast Ad Naus on turn 2. And if it can't do either of those things, it wants to like Welder or Bolus Citadel into play or something like that. It wants to kill you. It wants to kill you real fast. And my thought process was basically, wow, this sucks. Because if we get like 2 other non-interactive decks or even 1 other non-interactive deck, there's just a very real chance that we die on like turn 2. And I'm not going to have much to say about it. Or like if I do mulligan to the interaction, then I'm just like dying in the mid-range game to whatever is in seat 3. So I was like really hoping that we weren't finding another turbo deck in the play-in games. And it was certainly a possibility that there was going to be a turbo deck in there. And I was also, so it was, I think, I don't remember the full pod compositions of those games. I'm going to check real quick.
I can pull them up here. I should have pulled those up right away, but in the coalition, so it was Sage 4-color, so Omnath Breach, Abzan Farm, Hermit Pod, and Sultai Midrange. So in that pod, I was basically I was pulling for Squirrel. Sorry, Squirrel, love you, buddy. Wasn't pulling him for him because it was Squirrel. I was pulling for him because it was the only deck that I saw there that I actually wanted in the pod for my finals game, because both Abzan Farm and Hermit Pod are like. Hermit Pod, like, it's an oof deck. It can aggressively tutor the oof. It's not going to interact with the turn 2 Naus unless it has a turn 1 oof, especially not a turn 2 Naus in the play. So I was like, okay, the Omnath Breach deck, it plays blue. It's not trying to interact. It's trying to kill you. Abzan Farm, 0 interaction, just trying to kill you. 4-color Hermit Pod, the interaction is not fast enough to stop us from dying to a turn 2 Naus. So Squirrel was like literally playing the only deck in that pod where I was like, okay, yes, this deck both has the interaction to stop a turn 2 Naus and has the incentive to actually mulligan to that interaction because it has a mid-range game. So I was like, okay, I just really want that one to win, because otherwise my life is going to get a lot harder and I'm actually going to have to like find the Mind Break trap in like 2 top 7s or something. Right. And on the other side, sort of similar stuff, although so Sakura on Dimir Control would have been very happy to see that in the finals, and we did. So I was like, yes. More control decks, yes. I just don't want the Naus deck to beat me on turn 2. Deco playing Mardu Farm, obviously, again, a deck that I really didn't want to see. 5-color Tempo would have been totally acceptable as well. Najila, again, has the same types of incentives for mid-range game, because you can sort of just stick your commander, and then once you've stuck your commander, you can just hold up interaction forever. And even then, like it incentivizes you to mulligan to Force of Will, as long as you also have like a Crypt and land in your hand. That kind of stuff. And then Rector Fit, which would have been fine for me, although it gets sketchy lower on the interaction scale than the other ones.
It's the issue is that that deck has a lot of incentives to try to offload the interaction onto me and the other blue deck in the pod, much like I did in the finals.
So doing what you wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. I effectively just didn't want like another mid-range-ish Thras Tymnolist, especially not one with less interaction than I had, because then their incentives to be greedy and like offload the interaction to the rest of the table are even stronger than my incentives to do so, which means that I'm probably going to end up in the losing position if we don't. Like, even if I have to interact with the Naus, I'm in a losing position. If I don't interact with the Naus, I just lose the game, so I'm in a losing position. So there's not like it's the number of games where I actually win get a lot narrower. So yeah, effectively the exact optimal thing happened in terms of like what I wanted to have happen in terms of wins from those pods, because I got two very interactive blue decks that I could offload all the interacting onto.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, the stars aligned exactly perfectly. So we head into that. Those games go incredibly long. Squirrel ends up winning on the stack with a Lab Maniac, which was
that one
of the most beautiful things I've ever seen.
That one was hilarious to me because I know for a fact that both Kai and Killstars had played in Flash meta, but it was such a demonstration to me that everybody's in that everybody in that pod had atrophied their playing against Flash skills. because that exact I've done that exact win to so many tables in terms of just like, I have a Lab Mana play, don't worry about it, and then you just consult activate Thrasios and instant speed to kill somebody on top of something, and like it was so funny for me to watch because it was just like like everybody here forgot how to play against Flash in that moment.
Yeah, I remember watching that, and I was like sitting there watching the game, and he plays the Lab Maniac, and I texted Phoenix, and I was just like, James literally just put a loaded gun on the table and was like,
I mean, especially under rule of law, right? Because it's now like, everybody casts their spells, and you're like, cool, win, which is exactly what happened.
Well, that's like in the post game of the Monarch broadcast of it, which, by the way, big shout out to Marcus, Mike, Nick. You guys did an incredible job. All the people over there. But they were talking about what the MVP of that game was. And I'm like, it was the nurtured or the nurturing peatland. Like, that was the MVP. That's what won him the game.
Well, yes, sort of. Well, he did have a Thrasios activation, right?
He did. He didn't have mana for it, I don't believe.
Yeah, he had 6 mana. Yeah,
did
he had. Okay. Yeah, that's why I was so safe, is because he had the mana to both activate the peatland and activate Thrasios. Okay. So like removal theoretically wouldn't have worked in response to the not in response to the consult. So you're just like super safe there, because if they Odawara in response to the consult, you're like, fine, name Seedborn Muse, and then if they don't, you're just like, kill you anyway. So. It was a game.
Cicada is one of those players, and this is something that I've noted, is now over 2 seasons with Nimrus. Nimrus feels like a deck that nobody pays attention to. It's kind of like Kells in that respect.
It's a weird one because,
but he's like 5-2-1 on that deck over 2 seasons.
It's if people allow the game to get into a place where Nimrus is good, it's very hard to unget it into that place. Because you suddenly find yourself in a position where it's like, oh, I can't win the game next turn. And also Nimrus has 5 mana open, so they can just sort of like put in Nimrus if I don't threaten anything. And then suddenly this game gets a lot harder to play.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, one of the things that was wild is once he landed a Breaching Hippocamp in that conference championship game, it was just like all of his spells were just like you weren't losing any card advantage off of them.
Yeah. Curious Control's goated, even when it's in 2 colors.
So let's now look at the Mox Bowl itself. Sure. Like you said, you knew going in Fukins was going to try and go Burr. And
he did.
So the opening hand, I know you had to, for those who didn't watch the game, Fukins had a turn 1 Wheel of Fortune hand.
Not just a turn 1 Wheel of Fortune. He had turn 1 Land Rog, Mox Amber, Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus Wheel of Fortune, which was just like, we're dying. We're dead. Yeah.
What was going through your head? So first of all, when you mulliganed, what was it that because you took a second 7, right?
No, I took a 6.
Okay. What was your 6?
The 6 was not good. I saw my first 2 7s were both like 3 landers with no dork, and the first play was going to be on turn 2. And I was just like, this sucks. I'm not keeping either of these. I need to. If I'm not trying to explosively win the game, like that's not my theoretical thing that I want in mulligans isn't to explosively win the game. It's to explosively get out like a Bloom Tender and an Esper Sentinel on turn 1 and then just ride those to a win.
Right.
So I saw like two hands that just were the complete opposite of explosive. And I was like, yeah, we're not doing these. We're going to go to 5 if required here. And then I saw the 6, which was like, it was not good, but it was like good enough that I was like, there are a lot of games where this turns out fine. And we'll just have to jam it. So I think it was 2 lands, which were, I think it was a Morphic Pool and a Watery Grave. And then Imperial Seal, Notion Thief, and something else. Forget what
wasn't it things. Aetherflux Reservoir?
Else. No, there's no Reservoir in that deck.
Who was playing the Reservoir?
Fugans had the Reservoir.
Okay.
It was like, anyway,
I don't remember what it was either.
Yeah, there were 2 other cards in that hand. Neither of them were interaction. Neither of them were ramp. They didn't matter.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it was like an Elves of Deep Shadow and something else.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the choice was I could either keep an Elves of Deep Shadow or it was like an Elves of Deep Shadow or not a Brainstorm, but yeah, it was just like something else. It was like an Esper Sentinel or something, and I was just like, yeah, if I draw a green source, like I'm just playing the Elves on turn 1 anyway, and if I don't draw the green source, the other cards didn't matter anyway.
Right.
So like I'm going to keep it in the case that I do find a green source. If I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
So the plan with that hand was just that I was playing against 2 decks that wanted to draw a lot of cards and wanted to play the mid-range game once Fukins was stopped. And the idea of being able to Imp Seal for turn 1 for Mana Crypt and then hold up Notion Thief on turn 2 was just like good enough in my eyes. Like, especially if you end up drawing, like, if I draw a white source after that, then like you get Timna down. If I draw a green source, you can Thrasios, and then there's enough mana to activate Thrasios a bunch, and then you have a Notion Thief in play. So it's like, yeah, this will be fine. And then that got wheeled, and then I was like, thank God we're getting rid of that hand. But like, I am not happy about potentially what's coming next.
What was going through your head when you saw Fukins just slam all of that down? Like how awful? What terrible thoughts were going through your head?
Oh yeah, so I saw the Mox Amber. I was like, this isn't great. And then I saw the Crypt, and I was like, oh, we're dead. Like we're like immediately dead. Cool, yeah, that's fine. Because I thought it was gonna be like Land Rog Mamber, and then like maybe set up with like a Gamble or like play out like a Ragavan or something.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, we have like. There's like not a whole lot of cards left in hand, not a whole lot of gas. We're probably just like building up mana for another turn and then going for it on turn 2, probably without protection. And then he wheeled, and I was like, yeah, that's all out the window. He has like full hand plus all the mana required, and like all bets off. We're like there's completely at the mercy of whatever he draws off the top, which thankfully ended up being not a turn 1 win. He didn't actually have anything to do after that, which was good.
You always breathe a sigh of relief when the Turbo Nos player
like
wheels
pass,
on turn 1, and then it's like, all right, pass. And you're like, oh, good.
Yeah, I felt much better about that too, considering that like the main gas in my hand after the wheel was a fish, and I was like, oh, thank God he's not casting anything else, because that makes this fish much better.
Speaking of that, you did talk about this again on the post game show, and we're going to revisit it again. You got wheeled into a really stupid 7.
It was pretty good. There were real risks with it. Like in the moment, it didn't feel fantastic, but it ended up being just like the exact thing that I needed to win that game.
Right.
It was it was like 2 lands. One of them was Tundra, probably. I think it was like Tundra Fetch Land, and then like Tundra Fetch Land, Mox Diamond, Mystic Remora, Oracle, Tainted Pact, Grand Abolisher. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna win here. All right, this will work. So basically, like what I was thinking in the moment was, well, I really have to hope that this fish is good and we don't die and I draw cards from it, and that all happened.
Right.
So I was like I needed to find 2 mana sources basically to be able to win the game. And in the course of the fish draws that happened off of Fukins going for the Dawes on turn 2, because you have to. I mean, you wheeled people into hands that theoretically they didn't keep, so potentially just don't have anything good in them.
Right.
So he went for it, and that the counter war, I think I ended up with like 3 draws off of the fish, which drew me into both mana sources and a Fierce Guardianship, and I was just like, yeah, I'm pretty happy about this.
Yeah. Well, and
then
you definitely, after you pass the turn there on that turn one, you had, Cicada played very conservatively, just land under UC pass.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that was conservative. I'm pretty sure he just didn't actually even have anything. Yeah, it's just that was just what happens with blind wheels on turn one. You just typically, on average, half the table gets screwed, half the table actually gets to continue playing Magic. I was actually very surprised at the number of game actions that the entire table took after that wheel, because there was a very real chance that somebody woke up with no lands in their opener after that, or just all lands, right? There were very real chances for people to just have literally nothing going on, and it seemed like everybody at least had something. Although I think Sakura didn't actually cast anything aside from a Felwar Stone for the rest of that game.
Yeah, he cast the Felwar Stone, and then I believe it was James who had the Force.
He did have the Force, yeah.
Did he also have a Swan Song, or was it just the Force?
No, he had just Malevolent Hermit.
There were a lot of games played yesterday.
Yeah.
So that turn cycle goes around. Fukins plays, kind of goes for that turn two. Nas.
As you're sort of obligated to. I mean, it's not the chances aren't getting better if you don't go for that Nas then, right? So went for it. Unfortunately, got stopped. Well, fortunately for me, unfortunately for Fukins, got stopped.
Right.
Especially after casting the Rite of Flame in order to actually get to the Nas with the mana floating was definitely rough, just considering it feeds me the extra card there. But yeah, gets forced. And then plays a Goblin Welder. And there was actually, we'll talk about that Welder later, because that's a source of an almost heart attack from me in the next turn cycle.
So we get back to you. You keep the fish back around, and you play a Grand Abolisher, and the table audibly was not happy.
It was actually... That was actually an interesting decision point too, because there were a couple of lines there in terms of so you always keep the fish around, but there are weird options there in terms of I have the Fierce in hand, right? So the question is okay, do I think anybody has a Gilded Drake for the Grand Abolisher? If no, I should probably play the Grand Abolisher, but also do I think we're likely to die in the next turn cycle, or is there likely to be something that I can't deal with next turn cycle cast, in which case I probably want to hold up the Fierce by casting the Thrasios. And then also what's the likelihood of people actually responding to the Grand Abolisher with stuff, even if it's not a Gilded Drake, right? How likely is this to draw removal away from the Malevolent Hermit? And then also we know that James has a Mnemonic Betrayal in hand. Has the land drop to cast it next turn, and we got turn one wheeled. There's two Notion Thieves and two Notion Thieves, two Ad Nauses, and multiple pieces of acceleration in the graveyard from this. So it's
there was only one Ad Naus. Ad Naus got exiled because it was a Force and Egg.
Was that? I thought it was a Force. Whatever.
Yeah, it was a Force and Egg.
There is an Ad Naus in a bin with mana acceleration and an Imperial Seal and two Notion Thieves and a wheel. There's enough to make stuff happen if Squirrel gets around to be able to resolve a Mnemonic Betrayal with enough mana. So the evaluation there was really am I going to need this Fierce for the next turn cycle, or do I think that I'm fine without it? And then the parallel decision point is there a Gilded Drake? Nimrus didn't seem like it was doing much, and a new wheel hand. I didn't think it was likely that Sakura would have had access to a vamp. I think it would have had to have been exactly vamp or a raw Gilded Drake in hand, unless it was mana acceleration, but I know that he doesn't play Dark Red. So it was does he have the vamp for the Gilded Drake, or does he have the raw Gilded Drake? Because not a lot else here does it, especially with what he was representing by just playing Underground Sea Pass. And Squirrel Mob just pitched a Neoform to the Force Negation, so I was just okay, well, that narrows the range of things that could turn into a Gilded Drake on his side. So this seems probably fine. And then Fukins had just gone for the Ad Naus stuff, and he had two cards in hand. My assumption was there wasn't much there left over. So I ended up going for the Grand Abolisher.
So they get around the table. Squirrel Mob drops down the the Hermit. I forget the name of it. What's it called?
He'd cast
Malevolent
the
Hermit.
He'd cast the Hermit last turn cycle, I think. Yeah.
Well, you were ahead of him in turn cycle, right? Because that was your turn two was Grand Abolisher. Oh, that's right. You're right.
I think he had a
Gemstone Mine or Gemstone Cavern.
Yeah, Gemstone Caverns. Yeah. So he had a turn one Malevolent Hermit. And then he played a Guy's Cradle, which I was sort of sketched out about because there are theoretically combinations of things that turn that into Mnemonic Betrayal +1.
Right.
Fortunately, there wasn't. Squirrel ended up casting Thrasios in passing, and I was weight off of my shoulders because the two possible ways we lose the game from the position of me casting Grand Abolisher in passing are Sakara has absolutely nothing. Squirrel Mob has the mana acceleration into Mnemonic Betrayal and we die, or Fukins has backup or has an additional win attempt the next turn. Rips an Entomb off the top, has the Welder in play. Welder's a Citadel up, and then we die to that.
Right.
So as soon as Squirrel passed the turn, especially with a mana up, Sakara also had a mana up. I was like, okay, that's one bullet dodge. That's like the big bullet dodge. Now we just have to survive through Sakara's turn. Which was a bit of a heart attack because there was an Aetherflux Reservoir in his bin with a Welder in play.
Yeah.
and so it's like, okay, yeah, now the game is, can Fukins get up to 51 life on his turn using Aetherflux Reservoir to kill me?
Well, and you saw him, he weldered his mana crypt away, played, I forget what it was he played.
It was a Welder. Float some mana, Welder the Crypt into the Aetherflux Reservoir, and then cast Ikra.
That's right.
I think there was something before that, but it was looting or something. No, I think there was something else. Anyway, I think it was just Ikra. My joking at the time was, oh my god, I'm going to die to Ikra beats. And this is going to be ultimate karma considering all the hours that I've spent shitting on Ikra as a card.
Right.
But yeah, certainly if that game had gone on for even another turn cycle, there's a very real chance that I would have just died to a manual Aetherflux Reservoir activation. But dodged it for Fukins' turn, thankfully enough. Didn't get anything else cast on there. I think Fukins got up to I think it was 41 life or 42 life. So
something like that.
I think it was 3 spells away from being able to get up to above 50. So definitely happy to see the Ikra cast there.
Right. Well, so that led into your game-winning turn where you were just like, well,
yeah, we're just going to cast Oracle Consult.
I have a Grand Abolisher.
Not losing to anything here. There's no outs for the table, I don't think. I think I was asked after the game if I was worried about Odawara, and I'm pretty sure there were 0 outs to actually being able to channel an Odawara there.
I don't think anybody had the mana to do.
Yeah, both of the blue players only had a single blue mana up, and James only had Thrasios, so it still costs 3. So you would need to Dark Ritual and to somehow filter it. And there's just I don't think there's an extant way in either of those decks to turn 1 blue mana into 3 for James's case or 4 for Sakara's case.
Right. Yeah. And then you got the championship. So
locked it in.
With that being said, hopefully when you look forward to next season and you will be drafting at the back of the table again.
I will be. Yeah.
But the thing that's nice,
I need to put together the jank draft. It's going to be great. I have no expectations anymore because I just always have to pick the worst decks. So I get to pick all the meme decks and then still get an unreasonable number of wins because people don't respect meme decks.
It was very funny because I remember going into the draft, Ian was contemplating taking Magda, and I was just like, don't take Magda. It's going to, it is going to be disastrously bad for you.
The funny thing about the Magda pick to me wasn't actually the Magda pick, because I think the Magda pick is actually honestly sort of fine. I don't really think that I didn't have a huge issue with the Magda pick. Maybe the round 2 Magda pick was a bit iffy, but I still think it was fine. It was just Ian's insistence on playing it into the coalition pods.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
One of the North Coalition pods. Where I'm just like, this is the
worst
one pod.
place.
This is the pod where you absolutely know nobody at this table is going to let you do magnet things for free, right? Like we all very well understand what the interaction points here are, and that and that we can't interact with much of what you're doing, so we're just going to stop you early in the easy way, right? Like, we're not going to let you get up to 5 treasures and then try to interact with you. We're just going to kill Magda until it costs 10 mana.
I think at one point during one of your games when he played Magda costs like 10, I think, at some point.
Yeah. I mean, the first game that he played with it, he like attacked into Morgan. I was just like, great, give you a Forbidden Orchard token. And then he blocked and killed the Magda. And he's like, why would you do that? I'm just like, this is the one way that I have to interact with Magda. If you're going to give me a way to kill it for free, I'm just going to kill it for 1 mana.
Right. Yeah, it was one of those things where I felt like Magda, maybe in some of the cross-conference games, I felt like you might have had an opportunity for it to do really well there.
I think it would have been a fantastic pick into like rule of law pods, into like pods where people aren't trying to like win the game super early and you have time to actually grind it out. And like maybe people aren't playing enough removal because people never play enough removal. So you're just like, just like get some Magda wins in because you can just
to Ian's credit, we are kind of nitpicking because he also barely missed the playoffs. So
still was very barely there, but yeah, like I think the pick was actually very sound. I think the choosing to play it in pods where people were guaranteed to not let it do its thing was like the iffy one.
So I'm going to ask you just to kind of wrap things up. Obviously, biggest accomplishment for the season, winning the whole thing. But what is your biggest, if you look back, what is something you would have changed about this season if you could?
Would have changed? Probably would have
done
taken
differently.
I probably would have taken Arami over Grenzo. As much as I love Grenzo, I think I would have liked a blue turbo deck a bit more, or something with like a bit more play in longer games. I respect, like, there's a reason I picked Grenzo and I played it. Which is that I respect the power that fast decks have, even like low color fast decks have in good table position. But I would have preferred to have a deck that wasn't so just like absolutely reliant on mulligans to actually do anything. I still prefer in my turbo decks or in like my faster decks to still have like some semblance of like reasonable mid-range game plan, even if you're not like going to the late game and playing the late game, at least like being able to like do Arami stuff with like Fate Stitcher and things, or not Fate, like Stitcher Supplier rather, and just do stuff like that. Like I think I would have probably preferred that, but yeah, Morgan snapped it up, so I had to stick with Grenzo. Got to win. Yeah. Wait, did I? Actually, did I get another Grenzo?
Let me look.
I don't think so. I think I went on that one.
Grenzo was 0-3.
Yeah, that checks out. Oh, actually, no, sorry. The change that I would make was not playing Grenzo the third time. I don't know why I did that. I think I just wasn't counting the number of games that I played with each deck, and I was like, I think I need another game with Grenzo. And then I played it, and I was like, I played 3 games with Grenzo. That was not intended. Definitely should have spent another one on the 4-color decks.
And then what was your biggest surprise of the season overall? Something you like, what was the biggest thing that you were not expecting to see or happen?
I think I think there are always surprises in the draft. That always happens, but it's just, people have different evaluations and also like just different expertises with decks. So you can never like fully predict the draft. I think probably I was actually mostly surprised by just the way that like blue pod can actually get wins in those situations. I mean, like I understand the theory behind how blue pod forces wins through, which is that like a lot of decks just don't have answers to an onboard. Like if you stick a Vanifar, a lot of people just like can't deal with a Vanifar permanently before you can chain it up to a win or whatever. Or like in the low resource games where like you have a bunch of stacks out and then people like invest resources into trying to free themselves from under it or do other stuff and they get stopped. Like you're just in a position where nobody has resources anymore to do any of the stuff. But typically like I play games in decks that don't that don't removal check with its interaction suite before casting like the Vanifar or Yasan or Birthing Bod, or it's like an insert thing that you need to stick for a turn cycle to win the game here. Which means that I guess like my evaluation was a bit off on those going in, because I was like, I'm always under the assumption that people are like, yeah, you just kill the Vanifar as soon as you see it, like just easy done, and then like they just never work. Whereas like I didn't fully factor in before playing in those games, like, right, playing the Deafening Silence on turn 1 makes people at the table need to spend removal on the Deafening Silence, and then they don't have the removal for the thing. Right. Yeah, that's how that works. Instead of playing like a Thrasios and a Tymno, which specifically like make people not want to spend removal on them because they're low value targets. Like when you play stuff that is high value targets, but don't actually care about, like, you don't care about going away in terms of winning the game. Yeah. You just get to free up removal for the thing that actually does win you the game.
See, that's what's been really surprising me with playing Najeela for the Rector Pod stuff. Yeah. Is that Najeela just is such a solid win con on its own, and it draws so much attention, and then you just can be like, okay, I
got this.
Here's an arena rector. They're like, oh,
yeah. It's just, it's a weird one. I think it's probably a symptom of just playing too much Thras Tymno over the years. Just I have the counter magic incremental value brain rot in terms of like.
We also play like on Sundays in the most responsible pod imaginable.
Okay, so you have no idea, because like we play meme decks in those pods sometimes, and like it is still very responsible. But in my home meta, in terms of like playing in the QMTG meta with like me, Morgan, Zach, Keegan, the level of responsibility in those pods is unreal. Like every single time, no matter what, like you can bring a meme deck and the immediate response from the rest of the table is, yeah, we're going to fully respect it. You're never going to go off the ground, because I don't know what your Jank 2-color 4 CMC commander does, but I'm going to remove it on site because you built the deck for a reason. So it's just, so like I was playing, I put together like 2 days ago, I put together Jetmir, because I just wanted to limit test with, I personally think, I'm not going to get into the whole thing. I personally think Jetmir is by far the best combat steroid ever printed in the command zone. So I was like, okay, if this doesn't work with WinCon lists, like just trying to beat people to death, this is my litmus test of like, if I can't, like if I'm playing this deck and it's not working, I don't think any WinCon list stuff actually works.
Right.
But I just wanted to play a few games with it. The first game that I played on it, Morgan was in the pod, and it was like double Rafine and some other like two Rafine decks and another like good blue deck.
Gosh.
I forgot what the other good blue deck was. And Morgan's like, yeah, I think Jetmir is probably the most existential threat to my existence in this game. So I'm going to immediately start attacking you with a Rafine, and then also remove you Jetmir the first time you counter it. And I was just like, yeah, cool. yeah, that about checks out. I was like, yeah, I thought I'd be able to like, just like stick a Jetmir for a few turns. Nothing I'm actually doing is too threatening, and then people are just going to die. And it's just like, nope, that's not happening.
Yeah, I have to remind myself that too. And I'm like playtesting decks, as I'm like, I can't take too much from the like Team Turn 3 streams, because I'm like, we all just are so careful. And it's made me better too, though, playing with you guys, because now I'll walk in my local meta and I'll just be like,
yeah.
What do you mean you don't have removal for my card?
Yeah, right.
I didn't think I was going to get this far.
I think it's also just having like just people just need to have more respect for everything, right?
Yeah.
You just, if you play mid-range decks and you respect everything, like you just have pretty good chances no matter what.
Yeah. I will always sit in there's a guy in our local meta, and you can nobody at our table knew what Orvar did. He was bringing Orvar in, but because I played against Morgan so many times on that deck at this point, I was just like the entire game, just like, we need to remove that. We need to deal with that. That is a problem. And he's like, no, it was like, it's not doing it. Look, fine. I'm playing like Draft Chaff. And I was like, I know what that deck does. You can't pull this over on me.
Yes.
We need to deal with that.
Sapphire Medallion and Boomerroll Wrath are both Draft Chaff. No, together they're not Draft Chaff, and there's an Orvar in play. You don't get to have nice things.
Oh, man. Well, it's always a pleasure talking to you. I always have a great time.
Anytime.
Hanging out and chatting. And for when you are not here, which is most of the time, where can people find you?
If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'll repeat this spiel because I think I have like at the Sickrobot on Twitter. I think I have like almost 500 followers, which is nice because I think I've tweeted about 3 times, which is
you reply to stuff sometimes.
Yeah, but I don't tweet. I think if you scroll through my Twitter feed, it's all retweets of Into the North or other stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get that ratio of least effort to most followers up. So if you want to contribute to that cause, please do. Also, I have all notifications turned off, so you have to DM me or else I won't get your notification because I hate Twitter. But
that was a very good life choice, I have to say.
Oh yeah. If you want to find me anywhere else, I'm sometimes here.
Yeah.
Here. I'm sometimes on Team Turn 3 Sundays. And I'm almost always on Into the North, the podcast. You can find it basically anywhere that you find your podcast. We do it every 2 weeks. It's pretty cool. Also, we have some pretty awesome stuff coming down the pipeline.
I know you showed me some of it. It looks so cool.
That isn't directly related to our podcast, but is other content. So you should go. Well, don't check it out yet because it doesn't exist yet, but keep an eye out for it because it's coming down the pipe and it's going to be out relatively soon, I think.
Go subscribe to Into the North. I remember when when I first started working with you in Morgan, like the TMS channel just like soared past 1,000.
Yeah.
And you guys were like sitting at 750. And I was like, why the fuck are you guys there? You've been around forever. And so I was like actively trying to get you guys more subscribers for like 6 months.
I mean, bi-monthly podcast that with no video content isn't great for SEO.
Yeah.
It's just every 2 weeks you just dump a 2-hour content thing and then just like wait another 2 weeks until doing it. Not great for visibility, but yeah, you know. We're in it for the good content, not in it for the subscribers. So you should go subscribe if you enjoy in-depth cEDH content. We tend to make a lot of content for the entrenched cEDH players. So if you're down with that,
I mean, if you like our pod, if you like TMS, you'll like Into the North. That's pretty much how I feel about it. So yeah, thanks for coming on. Congratulations and good luck next year. And hopefully you can repeat this at Punt City and Oktoberfest.
Yeah, we'll make the attempts. We'll try to head out there. We might be doing another travel, but we'll see. Those are the 2 locked ones. Certainly going to Punt City. So if anybody's going to Punt City in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks, you should go check out there. Me, Morgan, and Lyndon are all going to be down there. So come say hi if you're going, and then make it out there. Oktoberfest also, I believe that actually. Oktoberfest might be all 4 members of the podcast.
Nice.
That's a rare Matt sighting if Matt comes down. So
I was going to say, I was like, Matt doesn't do much.
Yeah.
And Lyndon was supposed to go to Marchesa, but didn't he like get COVID?
He unfortunately got COVID. Couldn't make it down, but fortunately has a flight voucher that he is going to use with it this year for probably an event. So we'll see about that one.
Well, that about wraps things up for us here this week. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode and listening to the podcast. If you liked this episode or any of our other episodes, please make sure to rate us on whatever podcast platform you are on. And if you are listening on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tell me down in the comments what your favorite part of the show was. Also want to give a extra shout out and thanks to our top tier patrons, Justin, Adam Hamden, David Snavely, Diane Chase, Jason Bialik, Matt Boehner, and Senior Coupon. If you too would like to support the show, you can head on over to patreon.com/themindsculptors or check out the link in the description. Thank you again for joining us, and from all of us here at the Mind Sculptors, I'm Callahan, and we'll see you next time.